Okay, so then let's start.
Okay. One thing, if I can ask, it's fine to go live, about the time, if you could give me signals if we don't have much time left. Yeah, sure. I will do that. Thanks. So should we start, Sophia?
Yes.
Okay, let's go. So, hello everyone. We are starting our last but not least lecture on the project of climate skills for Kazakhstan. Today, our speaker is Anуд Аллузи. We are so glad and thankful to Anуд that she is contributing today and sharing her knowledge and expertise about climate investment. We will be having, as normally we do, the lecture and then Q&A session in the end. So please feel free to type your questions rather in Kazakh, Russian, or English languages. We will translate it to Anуд and then ask it in the end of the session. So please, Anуд, the floor is yours. Please introduce yourself and then we should start the lecture. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, and hi, everyone. Good afternoon, I should say, given the time in Kazakhstan at the moment. As Donna said, my name is Anуд Alлузи, and it's a pleasure to be a presenter to you today, and I'm honored to have been selected, actually, to give you a presentation about sustainable finance in general. I know you've had a series of lectures before, so I was hoping that I would just make this lecture more focused on case studies to turn the theory into action and the theory that you've been hearing about into operations, and how does it need to apply it on the ground. I thought at the beginning I should actually just share with you my experience working on green finance. I am not your typical profile. I'm not an ecologist. I'm not an environmentalist. I'm not an engineer. I'm not any of these basically majors or educational background that you see people have in this sector. And I think this is one of the myths about the sector, is that if you study it, then you can work on it. Otherwise, you're not able to be working on green finance. So a little bit about my background. I'm currently working at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. It's a bank that focuses on development, as the name says, and we actually operate as well in Kazakhstan. It's luckily one of my countries of operations. I got to work and visit Kazakhstan, and it's a lovely, lovely country. It's not like you need me to say it, of course. I know you all know that. And I've been working with the EBRD for almost 6 years at this point. And I started working with them on strategy and shifted to work more on green finance. And I'll tell you a bit more later on the work that I do, but I just want to tell you how I stumbled to work on sustainable finance or sustainable lending in general. And it really happened by coincidence. My background is in policy, economic development as well. This is what I did for my undergrad and graduate school, where I studied at the University of Michigan undergrad, focused on international relations with economics. And then in graduate school, I went to the Harvard Kennedy School, and I focused on public policy with an economic development angle. So as you can see, it's not the usual work. And actually, at the beginning, I worked a lot on human rights projects and advocacy. And then at some point, I realized that to work on human rights, you need to do economic empowerment. So I shifted and started really working a lot on economic development aspects, like how we can empower people to make sure that basically if they have money in their pockets, then they would be able to also start thinking more about their rights and what is owed to them basically from the systems. And then when I started working on this, I remember my first project was at the World Bank. I was hired at the World Bank to work on turning my master's thesis into a project. And my master's thesis was focused on increasing economic opportunities for women in the labor force. As you can see, not related to green and finance at all. And one manager actually asked me how comfortable I am with numbers. And I remember saying, I'm very comfortable. I've always been comfortable with numbers. So I joined he asked me to join his project to help him with analytical work, just analyzing numbers and massive data. And that was the beginning of my journey in sustainable finance. His project was focused on agribusiness financing and how to make agricultural investments sustainable. And from then I started learning and about what does it mean to do sustainable investments. And really, that was the beginning of my career, just data analysis. And to let people know, I work with people with extremely, extremely diverse educational backgrounds. I have colleagues that are the usual, the engineers, the environmentalists, the ecologists that are working on the topic. But then I have the lawyers, the data analysts, the architects, because in the session that I will show you, and many other professions, we have actually colleagues that used to be journalists before because they're great writers and reporters. So I think the field can host a really big number of expertise because it needs that diversity. Because green finance is not just one sector, it just applies to all sectors. It's just about how we green them. And this is where I will be going in the presentation. Long introduction, but long story short is that regardless of your background, you have strength that you can bring into this topic. And I think this topic will become the main topic that people will have to work on because it will help us coexist with nature, with the environment, and with the planet that we live on. So don't let not having certain expertise stop you from joining the sector. But yeah, that's how I joined, and that's my focus. Let me tell you a bit about my focus at EBRD, even though here I'm presenting at my own capacity, not through work. But I've been working, as I said, at the European Bank for Reconstruction Development for 6 years now. And I'm working with them on intermediated finance, which is basically greening the loans that we give to banks, to private banks in our countries of operations, to make sure that the loans that they give to sub-borrowers, like people like us or companies, are also green. So this is really the work that I do. As I mentioned, Kazakhstan is one of my countries. I also work a lot on Armenia, and I have some projects on Egypt and other countries. And right now I'm focusing a lot on agri-lending and as well as nature financing, which are topics that I will be touching on in my presentation today. And something that I wanted to add in terms of working on sustainability from day one, I felt that I'm learning completely different topics from one day to another. One day I'm working on sustainable agri-lending, so I start developing my knowledge and experience on what does that mean, and start talking to stakeholders that are very involved in the topic. And then another day or another week would be focused on green buildings, where I start learning it and have better understanding of what does it mean to have a green building. And that's the nice thing about working with financial institutions, is that I'm not focused on, like, of course my sector focus is intermediate, like, financial sector, but at the same time I get this like broad range of exposure to all the different projects and all the different investments that we do in our countries of operation at the EBRD. So this is really an introduction. I personally, I love nature, and my attachment to nature, whether it's like through going through my hikes or diving or just spending time in nature, made me feel that I need to do work that is impactful, and I need to learn as much as possible how to reduce my impact and others people impact on nature. And this really was the reason I decided to work in development and specifically work on sustainable development. And EBRD has been a great employer where I can do these very exciting projects. I think we can, Dana, unless we have a question, like you have a question to me, maybe we can start the presentation. I'm having an issue with my monitor right now, so it might take a couple of seconds for it to load, but that's not an issue from your end, that's an issue from my end.
Yes, I think we should go to the next slide, please, Sophia.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, so green investments, what and for whom? I know you had already a lot of sessions about this, but I thought it would be good to have the discussion as a reminder, because sometimes we think of green investments as this like big, difficult, expensive thing that is in the corner, where in fact it could be something that people like you and me invest in. And green investments is we talk about project eligibility, which is basically what projects would count as green, or a portion of the project would count as green. And here I list the main ones, really, that at least the main ones that I work on, which are those that are involve renewable energy, those that involve energy efficiency, those that involve green buildings, as I mentioned earlier, sustainable transport, sustainable water use and water consumption, sustainable land management as well, and circular economy. These are the main ones that we actually look into or consider the ones that have green component. And then when we ask who are the green investors, really it could be people like you and me, as I said. Basically, when I buy an electric vehicle, I'm already contributing as a green investor. When I place solar panels on the rooftop of my house, or change the windows of my house to be double glazed so they can maintain energy or the temperature, then in this case, I also am doing investing in green. But then, of course, it can be in a bigger scale. We can talk about like the MSMEs, micro and small enterprises or medium enterprises. There are the big corporates, the massive buildings that you see around, including the big banks that you see around you. We can also talk about governments as well, and non-government organizations. All of us can be green investors, actually. If we can go to the next slide, please. So how do you determine if the investment is green? And that's something that I'll tell you really from my projects, but could be applied when you're looking into investments yourself. The first thing is decide on an investment, of course. Is it, as I said, is it a new car that you're thinking about purchasing? Is it a greenhouse for the farm? Is it construction of a new building, or is it house renovation? Because any component right now can have green integrated into it, and not to say it in a way that you can green anything easily, of course not. And that brings me to phase 2, which is identifying the key categories of the green investment. Is the investment allowing me to be energy efficient? Is the investment giving me renewable energy? Is the investment connected to circular economy? Or is the investment helping me with sustainable resource management? And then the third one, which less for you, but more for me, specifically for my job, is evaluation criteria. So we evaluate the criteria of the investment, and we look at the environmental impact of the investment. For example, am I saving energy? Am I reducing CO2 emissions? Or am I reducing water consumption, for example, or the harm that I'm doing on the soil? Is it long-term? Is the investment sustainable in the long term, or is it a short-term investment and sustainability component is short-term? And then we have the business practices, of course. Are we just changing a building for a company, or are we changing their business practices to become more sustainable? And that, of course, something would be much more on the long term for the company. And then, of course, we have the compliance with standards. Like, let's say you're exporting and you're an exporter exporting to a country that has specific standards in terms of land use, fertilizer use, pesticide use. And that's something that we check. But as I said, these are for much bigger projects. So I don't want you to think it's for projects, it's for every single investment that you want to think of. Next slide, please. So what sectors can be green? And as I mentioned earlier, you probably sensed from my introduction and my talking about my colleagues and their backgrounds, a lot of sectors can be green or would have green component. So the first one that comes to mind, and of course it's the most straightforward, although very complex one, is agricultural sector. And then there's the energy sector, when you start working on renewables and hydro and power plants and such. There's the financial sector, it's the sector that I'm mostly focused on. There's the infrastructure sector, when we're, for example, constructing new buildings and such. property and tourism. Also, when we're talking about building hotels or building guest houses with certain activities for tourists, we can definitely green components of that. Then we have the transport sector, and this is where electric vehicles and electric charging stations would be a big example that is growing and is growing around you, of course, specifically in Kazakhstan. There is as well the telecom component, where we, of course, make sure to green telecommunication companies that, for example, switching from regular landlines or from regular internet lines to fiber optics, because they are known to reduce energy consumption. And then the manufacturing and services. So that's like production line and all the machineries that you need for that line. Okay, I've been talking for a while, and I thought we could dig into case studies. So this way, I can show you some of the investments that either I or my colleagues have worked on as examples of what it means to be working on green investments. And I can start with the next slide, please. I thought, of course, given that I'm presenting to fellows in Kazakhstan, it would just make sense to start my first example of an investment in Kazakhstan. And this is an investment of a wind farm called Besnurli Wind Farm. And Sophia, please, if you can start loading the video as I speak to our listeners about it. It's a wind farm that we invested in. Of course, it's in the energy sector. And the investment is to make new energy efficient wind turbines. And as I said, the country is Kazakhstan. I have a short video that explains the project in more details, but really it was a wonderful project that we worked and still working on, actually, because there's additional expansion to wind farms to provide Kazakhstan with renewable energy. If you could play it, please.
ТО «Веснурлы» создано в 2016 году с целью реализации инвестиционного проекта по строительству и эксплуатации ветровой электростанции общей мощностью 8,45 мегаватт. Электростанция эксплуатирует 13 ветровых турбин. Общая инвестиционная стоимость строительства составила 8,7 ТО «Веснурлы» создано в 2016 году с целью реализации инвестиционного проекта по строительству и эксплуатации ветровой электростанции общей мощностью 8,45 мегаватт. Электростанция эксплуатирует 13 ветровых турбин. Общая инвестиционная стоимость строительства составила 8,7 миллионов долларов США, из которых 4,7 миллиона было профинансировано в рамках программы ГЭФ. В результате успешной реализации проекта выбросы СО2 в атмосферу сокращаются на 14 297 тонн в год.
Мы построили уже не первую ветровую электростанцию в Казахстане. При поддержке заемных средств в рамках программы ГЭФ нам удалось эффективно реализовать наши инвестиционные планы. Благодаря только этому объекту в энергосистему Казахстана в месяц генерируется в среднем 1 миллион киловатт-часов электроэнергии.
Thank you, Sophia. I'm glad to hear that the viewers can hear the sound well. I was worried because I wasn't able to hear it myself. So, I mean, there are subtitles, but it's nice to hear it, especially it describes the details of it. So, just to give you an example of this project when it came, as you can see, it's a big investment and it's a big project. And I don't want you to think that every green investment has to be in millions of dollars, or that's definitely not the case. We have investments that are definitely much lower than that. We have it as little as $500 sometimes, especially through financial institutions, in comparison to direct investment where a company borrows to invest. And as I said, this one is special because we really started looking into, first thing, we start making sure that there are no environmental impact on the ground. So just to give you an example, we start looking at where it will be built, what is the biodiversity biodiversity in that area? Would it cause any harms to bird migration? Like, we have to think about all these components, and while renewable energy, of course, is extremely important, it would not be as beneficial if we are damaging other aspects of the ecosystem. And in this case, we're talking about the biodiversity of the ecosystem, birds as an example, or land as another. And we start looking at how much energy these would be producing, how much CO2 emissions are we reducing by investing in such project, as you saw from the numbers that we have. And again, like, this was one of our main projects, and we had many other projects coming as important projects coming up, focused on wind farms, solar panels, and others in Kazakhstan. I wanted to diversify the projects to give you a wide range of projects in different countries. But as I said, Kazakhstan is one of my country of operations, and I wanted to start with this wind farm because it's one of my biggest projects currently through intermediated finance. So this would be through a bank in Kazakhstan rather than through direct lending to a company. So this is the first example, or first case study, and maybe we can move to our next case study, please. Okay, so our next case study is modernizing farming practices. And I think usually when we talk about green lending, a lot of people start thinking, agriculture immediately, and it's the only sector that can be green, which clearly from the example before and the examples that I will be sharing with you, that's not the case. Like, there are a lot of sectors. But with that being said, modernizing farming practices, of course, are very important. And we have this project in Armenia. It's with an investor that is a company called Bidialko Winemaker. It's in the agri sector, and the investment is in solar panels and modern machinery for the winery. And I went there actually myself. I went to see the vineyards, which was really nice to see our investments turning into action. And what does it mean to have a much more energy efficient machinery, and what does it mean to get all of your winery electricity from the solar panel? So it became like a self-sufficient in terms of the energy you consumed at this winery, which was very nice to see. And they had fantastic wine, which always helps, of course, and makes the project even more enjoyable. Maybe we can watch the video next. Yes, this one would be great.
Քանի որ արտադրականության ավելացման համար մենք կատարել ենք ներդրումներ, գնել ենք մթերման սարքավորումներ, բուտեր, պոմպեր եւ այլն, այդ ամեն ինչը ներդրել ենք մեր արտադրության մեջ, այդ ներդրումների արդյունքում հիմնականում ավելացել է արտադրականությունը, այսինքն եթե մեկ միավոր արտադրանքի համար պետք է մի քանի օր, այս բանը արդեն դա հնարավոր է մեկ օր։ Այսինքն այդ ամեն ինչի արդյունքում ունենք նաեւ էլեկտրոէներգիայի ու առհասարակ էներգակիրների մեծ խնայողություն։
Thank you, and I hope you're enjoying the partially describing the case study, partially watching the video, just so this way you don't get too bored of me talking for a long time. So I thought it would be nice to be breaking it down this way with some videos to show you. But as I mentioned, like this investment in the solar panels and the modern machinery, just to give you an example, actually, the machinery that they used to have are from like old Soviet times. They were really big. Of course, it was helping, but it was helping them. They were working, but the problem is they were extremely inefficient, very slow, and high energy consumption. So when the investment came to us, we started thinking of course, what is the benchmark? What's the system that they have in place? What are the equipments they have in place? What is the electricity consumption that they have in place? And how would our investments help? And this is how we start doing the analysis of what I mentioned earlier, the criteria, the eligibility, and such. And from that, we decided that, yes, this is, of course, green investment, would be eligible for green because we're reducing energy consumption by a lot. We are increasing productivity as well, which is always useful, of course. And we're reducing emissions from the solar panels, where the winery became very much reliant on solar panels. So that helps a lot. We can go to the next case study, unless, Dana, you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think we should go to the Q&A in the end.
Sure. Okay. Okay, and this one is on wastewater expansion. There is this project was actually based in Egypt. It was in a municipality called Al Fayoum. It is focused on infrastructure, and it is a wastewater treatment plant. And just basically, we were having an issue where what was happening is that a lot of the waste was going into the lake, unfortunately, because of flooding or such else. They did not have the proper infrastructure to handle the proper infrastructure to handle the waste for the whole area. So this is something that we helped, and this is, of course, a green investment for many reasons. And the main one is the reduction of pollution. Like, you are reducing pollution by a lot when you're making sure that no waste is going into water bodies such as lakes or rivers. That's one thing that we look into, because it's very environmentally damaging when this happens. And in addition to the environment damage, it's the human cost as well, where of course people get sick when the area around them is not as hygienic, and that's why this project covered a lot of important aspects. We can go to the next slide to play the video, please, that explains it, because this video shows you the community in the area and what they say about the investment.
أشد معاناة من عدم وجود مشروع الصرف الصحي بني صالح. زمان كنا نلاقي المياه الجوفية بعيدة خالص، دلوقتي على بعد بسيط خالص نلاقي المياه الجوفية. عندنا مشاكل في الأرض الزراعية، عندنا مشاكل في البيوت، جابت لنا أمراض كتيرة جدا ما كناش نعرف عنها. نأمل بعد إتمام المشروع الأمراض دي تختفي، المياه الجوفية تبعد شوية، نعيش في أمان صحي، نتمنى ذلك.
بالنسبة للترنشات اللي كانت موجودة قبل مشروع الصرف الصحي كانت ضرانا وضر البيئة، وكانت بتكلفنا كل شهر حوالي من كل بيت بيصرف له حوالي من 300-400 جنيه كسب. فأصبح الصرف الصحي ريحنا ونظف البيئة ومنع حاجات كانت مضرة بالصحة كتير.
Okay, something that I wanted to add about this project too, actually, because sometimes we classify project as green, but then there's another additional classification that's focused on environmental, and that we'll come to it actually when we talk about nature investments. And this one is definitely would be considered related to nature investments, given the reduction of pollution, as I mentioned, because of course when you're polluting the lake, you're killing the biodiversity in it, and leads to a lot of other problems, including the health problems that I mentioned earlier. So this was one of the projects that my colleagues worked on, not myself. That was, of course, a flagship project, and I thought it would be good to diversify the type of investments. I can go to the next case study right now, and that's something that I worked on myself. It's a greener recycling, as we call it. It's a recycling factory that recycles textiles. So our clothes and such, so they can actually reuse it to make other fabric, which is really tremendous. And they recycle cotton, which, as you know, of course, cotton is in demand, and cotton can be very difficult and very demanding on the land and on the soil and on the water consumption. So this was a great project because, of course, instead of wasting the products, this one was recycling them. And in addition to using energy efficient machineries, they also integrated solar panels to help with their recycling work. It's in Armenia, and the sector is in manufacturing. Again, just to show you the width of the sectors that are involved in green. We can show the video, please.
Մենք զբաղվել ենք տեքստիլով 96 թվականից, հասանք այնտեղ, որ մեզ պետք է մեր սեփական թելը ունենանք, կտորը ունենանք։ Հապոների վերամշակման արտադրությունը մենք նախաձեռնեցինք 2018 թվականից, այս ֆաբրիկան հիմնենք, որպեսզի արտադրությունը Հայաստանում դառնա փակ ցիկլի, այսինքն մենք ունենանք թել, կտոր, հյուսվածք, հագուստ արտադրող ընկերություններից մենք վերցնում ենք միջլեգալային տարածքի այդ մասերը, ստանում ենք թել, մանվազք, մանվազքից ստանում ենք կտոր, գուրբաններ, մայկաներ, հիմնական թափվածքը Հայաստանից մենք մեծ արտադրողներից ենք վերցնում, նույնիսկ սա բավարար չէ, մենք ներկրում ենք եւ վերականգնում ենք, ինքը վերականգնողական արտադրություն է, այսինքն մենք այս ամեն ինչով մենք բերգում ենք բնությունը։ Դիմելով վզեպ կանաչ ֆինանսավորման ծրագրին, տեղադրեցինք ֆոտովոլտային կայանը, արևային։ Այսօր մենք շատ գոհ ենք, քանի որ կատարվեց մի բան, որը մեր կանաչ արտադրությունը սնուցում ենք նաև կանաչ էներգիայով։ Մեր արտադրության, այսօրվա մեր արտադրության 70%-ը օգտվում է արևի էներգիայից։ Մոտավորապես 700 մեգավատ տարեկան հոսանք ենք ստանում, կանաչ հոսանք, առաջի հերթին էժանացնելով մեր արտադրությունը, մենք մրցակցային եղնենք մյուս էժան էներգիա ունեցող երկրների հետ, իրանց նավթն է, մեր արևն է։
Great, thank you. I know we're running out of time, so I'll try to rush the upcoming case studies. We can go to the modernizing farming practices, which is a case study of an investment that we did. If you're on the slide, it's a case study that we did with an investor that is a farmer. It's in the agricultural sector. It is, of course, investing in greenhouses, as you can see from the photos, and it was done in Tajikistan. If we could play it, please.
skoşuyla bir konikati maşgulüm. Hani solda omada şaş sotiga garib xona soxti.
Thank you. So yeah, as you can see, it's a very useful, nice project that my colleague worked on. Just for your information, not all of our projects have videos. Yeah, I just selected the ones that are with videos. Otherwise, we'd not be able to afford investing in all these projects. It would have been great to have videos for all of them, but unfortunately, that's not the case. Which takes me to the next case study that does not have a video, but I thought it would be very important to tell you briefly how, again, the regular individual, people like you and me, can invest in green. And in this case, it was a homeowner. This is not actually his home. It's a photo that I took from the internet, so don't think that you have to have a massive house like this, but it was the photo that would work for this presentation. But really, it's just very simple homes that would need to, instead of losing energy during winter from weak windows or like thin windows, or having lose energy also during summer when they're turning on the air conditioning, and once you turn it off, there are times when you feel like the cold air escaped and it's back to it being extremely warm, or the other way around in winter time. And we realized that a lot of issues are, of course, with the insulation and with double glazing in buildings. And this was just a homeowner wanted to change the windows to double glaze just to reduce their energy bill. And it was in Kazakhstan, as I mentioned, and the homeowner just switched the windows to fully double glazed windows through the house. So this investment was not a big investment, but it was really big in terms of savings, and the payback period is very short actually for such investments, because it substantially reduces the energy cost. So I can also go to the next case study, which is healthier fish production. And this is someone I worked on myself in Armenia. It is with a private company, and the sector is in aquaculture, and the investment was solar panels and machinery. I know we covered many solar panels, but I thought it would be cool for you to see how the machineries are different in each sector. And this one was very much related to water purification and such. We can play the video, please, when you get a chance. But yeah, it was a very cool project that we got to work on. And it's nice to see that we can make fish production healthier and greener.
թվականից զբաղվեցի ձկնաբուծությամբ։ Տարիների ընթացքում մենք փորձեցինք տեղադրել ժամանակի տեխնոլոգիաներ, այրատներներ, որոնք թվացով հարստացնում են մեր ձկնաբուծարանը, որով կարող ենք ավելի որակյալ ձուկ ստանալ։ Մենք կարողացանք բարձրացնել մեր որակը, ձկան որակը, որը շուկաներում եղավ մրցունակ։ Պահանջարկը ավելացավ, դրանով փորձեցինք ավելի զարգացնել մեր Հայաստանի ձկնաբուծարանները։ Դրա համար մենք սկսեցինք սպառել բավականին մեծ քանակությամբ էլեկտրոէներգիա։ Հոսանքի ավելացման հետ միասին մենք դիմեցինք ԶԵՊ կանաչ ֆինանսավորման ծրագրին, տեղադրեցինք արևային պանելներ, այդ կայանների շնորհիվ տարեկան ստացանք 470 մեգավատ էլեկտրոէներգիա, որը կազմում է մեր տարեկան ամբողջ ծախսի 1/3 մասը։
So the video is...
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I'm having issues with my electricity, so the screen keeps on going off. That's why I couldn't see it. But basically, so yeah, as I said, this was a very nice investment that we did in Armenia. And as you saw, like the payback, like the loan was not very large for a private company at this size. Like it was $142,000. And the payback period was very short. We're talking about 4 years that they managed to pay back the loan, meaning that basically in every year, the savings reached $35,000 every year that they saved from having this investment. And that's why they managed to reach this payback very quickly. So yeah, it's one of the projects that we worked on aquaculture, and I thought it would be interesting to show you how it goes. The next one is actually super interesting for me, because if we can go to the Green Cities slide, pardon me, I can't see what slide you're on, but the Green Cities concept is that basically how to support cities become greener. What are the components that they could invest in to help them be a greener city? So this is an example where we worked with a municipality, with Sarajevo actually, which is in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And we worked on different projects actually as the EBRD, my colleagues and myself worked on different projects to help the city be green and smart as well. So by that I mean like digitally connected. And by that we worked on tram tracks, we worked on water infrastructure, we worked on green buildings, and there were digital solutions as well. And the video is a bit longer than the other videos, but it's just because it combines a lot of projects. If we could please go and play the next video.
Hi, I'm Abby, and I'm in Sarajevo, a city with some of the best food in the Western Balkans, but also some of the worst air pollution in the world. Some people in Sarajevo are so worried about the air pollution levels that they use an app to check the levels of pollution before they leave their homes. Tell me about the app.
So every day I have to check pollution outside. Example, today it's 150.
Oh wow.
In the winter time it's going more than 450. Today we can breathe.
I'm here to see how the EBRD is helping Sarajevo to become a greener city. Lots of people use cars in Sarajevo, but the city wants to encourage people to use more public transport, just like these trams that you can see behind me. So they're investing in renewing and extending the tramline tracks to hopefully encourage people to leave the cars at home. The city has bought 35 new electric trolley buses. These produce zero emissions, so are helping keep the air in Sarajevo cleaner. How are these buses better than the old ones that you were driving before?
Prvi put nakon olimpijade, odnosno 38 godina je prošlo da su došla nova vozila u Sarajevo. Nova vozila imaju klima uređaje, imaju pristup invalidi, mogu nesmetano ući u vozila, imaju video nadzor, elektronsku naplatu karata.
There are lots of buildings in Sarajevo, just like this one behind me, which is a student accommodation block, that aren't very energy efficient. So the city is investing to make them greener. And hopefully, this will improve the living conditions of people as well.
We are here at the student dormitory in Nejareću, where we are actually changing new windows and adding some thermal insulation, improving energy efficiency of the building itself and improving life conditions of the students here. The project will include 40 public buildings, high schools, elementary schools, student dormitories, and hospitals.
So another way Sarajevo is becoming greener is by improving the water supply infrastructure. And behind me, you can see some brand new water pipes. These are helping get more people clean and fresh water. The It's been really great visiting Sarajevo and seeing some of the amazing projects the city's invested in. It's going to help make the city greener and more energy efficient. But most importantly, it's going to improve the quality of life for the people living here.
So this concludes my case studies, actually, and I thought, as I mentioned earlier, just showing you a variety of type of investments that we work on, just to clarify to you how all the theory that you've been listening to and learning about translate into practice when we look at green investments. And I have more slides, but I do know that we're running out of time, and I want to make sure that we have time for questions. Dana, I can just maybe summarize nature work, because I know that's something that your fellows are interested in. So just if we can go to the next slide, please. Another slide. So for nature and biodiversity, I thought I could tell you a little bit about what we're thinking, because it is a complicated topic, because of course these are usually not as many private investments associated with them. But just to tell you very quickly, because you'll be hearing nature and biodiversity a lot moving forward. And for example, we look at nature in four realms. We look at it as like land, ocean, fresh water, and atmosphere. So all of it contributes and adds up to nature. And biodiversity is the part of nature that is alive. So we're talking about plants, animals, fungi, bacteria, viruses, everything that is around us that is considered alive. And their evolution and interactions is all part of biodiversity. And when we say ecosystems and ecosystem services, so ecosystems, for example, when we talk about forest or water as an ecosystem, and the ecosystem services is what this ecosystem provides us, such as provisioning, like for example, like are we fishing from this? Are we using wood, such as from the forest? The regulation, regulating services, is it like water purification that it's helping with? Is it purifying the air, such as the forest, the work that they do? Is it cultural or all supporting? For example, are we using it as recreational, or we do, for example, hikes in the forest? And in terms of supporting, we're looking at, are we, for example, getting food from it? Are we using it for soil formation and such? So this is like a general description of nature and biodiversity that I thought would be helpful for you to know. And just very quickly right now, what we're trying to do is that we look at investments that provide us with a net gain. So for example, some of that, like whether it's nature positive or nature mainstreaming, you'll find different words actually that are described. Now you have nature-based solutions, nature positive, and nature mainstreaming. And I can't tell you I exactly know the difference between them, because I think those who also decided on them still don't know the difference, and they're still working on putting it together. So bear with me. I know it gets confusing, but let me tell you, you're not the only ones that are confused. We're confused as well. But basically, how do we not do harm? And not only we don't do harm, but how do we restore the environment and help it? And a good example that we had, for example, here is the wastewater treatment, because you're definitely helping the environment and you're helping restoring certain aspects of it instead of polluting. So that could be counted as a nature investment. There are other investments that are much clearer and very straightforward. For example, floods. I know, unfortunately, Kazakhstan has been going through flooding issues, flooding problems from climate change. And any investments that would reduce flooding or would, for example, reinstate certain areas such as mangroves and wetlands would very much be nature investments. Because if you think about it, when a flood happens, in addition, of course, to causing a lot of chaos and causing a lot of impact on us and on our houses and our daily schedule, it also has extremely massive environmental impacts. So with floods, for example, a lot of the trees sometimes get flooded, the lands where the food is growing for us gets flooded, and that means that would reduce the food security. And then of course, when the flood happens, also all the polluted things that are with it. So we're talking about whatever toxic materials that get caught in the flood would end up in water bodies, which is of course very problematic and harmful for the environment and for us. So this is like a very brief description on what nature constitutes. I have more slides, but I think it's better to just jump to questions because I really wanted to give time for the fellows to ask questions. And I think you have probably access to the slides.
Yes, thank you so much. We will share the slides with the participant in the end of the session, so it will be in our Telegram channel. We have different questions from the chat, so let me read them for you. The first one is that Alexander is asking, I see some criticism to renewable energy sources from allies of nuclear power and climate change deniers. It is also often true when it comes to reports of bank watch for the project subsidized here. Question is, how do you deal with that, professionally and personally?
Thank you. Thanks, Alexandra. Great question. And I'm glad you added the personally and professionally in line, because it makes it fair that we have both lives, the professional hat and the personal hat that we have. For me, look, in terms of a nuclear power, I find nuclear power plants very problematic myself, and I have not been involved in any. And that's something I don't understand, how we were allowed to do nuclear power plants in general in the world when we never knew exactly how we're going to manage the nuclear waste properly. So my father-in-law is a physicist, and every time we start talking about nuclear power plants, he gets angry because he's like, we cause so much harm to the environment by doing this. So good thing he's not on the call, because he would have taken the mic from me to talk about it. And in terms of the projects that are subsidized for some of the bank watch, I'm more than happy to look more into it. But in terms of how I deal with these projects, really we have multiple layers that we deal with before we approve a project. And there are times when we think that everything is going smoothly, and then we find one thing that is actually not going as smoothly by one team, which is our environmental team. We have a big environmental team that does all the assessment to make sure that they're complying with standards, with best practices, and they're not. And one thing that I should add is that for our investments, we have to have something called that the investment the thing that is called do no harm, that basically our investment is not causing harm. That's the main important thing. And a lot of investments were rejected because they were not seen as investment that don't do harm, and they do harm, whether it's for the environment, whether it's for the community that lives around it, and would not go through. Professionally, of course, I go through all the channels that we have to make sure that no project gets approved if it's causing harm. Personally, it is difficult. I'm not gonna tell you, especially for someone who loves the environment. I do my best to push to stop a project from moving forward if I find it harmful, and of course I do what I can with the needs that I have to make sure that they're escalated. And if there are those who are with more expertise deciding that it is fine, then they know it better. But I'm someone who always think about economic development. Economic development needs to be sustainable, because otherwise we would be developing countries for a very short period, and then that's it. The others would move on, while the people living in the country, people from the country, would end up suffering the consequences. So I always think about it this way. I didn't mention earlier, I'm half Jordanian, half Palestinian, and a lot of projects happen in my country as well. So I think about it this way as well. Do I want this project to happen in my country? Would it harm my people, or would it harm the environment that I live in? So yeah, thanks for the question.
Thank you. The next question is from Rahima. Hi, Anu. Thanks for this presentation. So much to think about. I currently work within Sustainable Investments team in Aviva, UK. But since I'm from Kazakhstan, I'm quite interested in what's being done to decarbonize brown industries, or are there transition plans on supranational level? Appreciate not a simple question given they are digitally generating ones, but are there ESG adaptation strategies in place?
Yes, there is in place. So I actually am not specifically working on them, but I'm happy to speak to you, Rahima, after this, or just connect you to the colleagues that are working on it. But I can give you an example that I personally worked on, which is through the agency in Kazakhstan, which is like, the central bank basically of Kazakhstan. They started making it mandatory for banks in the country to disclose information about their investments for ESG purposes. So this actually has been an area that we worked on for years, and we're very happy to see the agency adopting it and actually initiating it, not just adopting it. And now I know now it's voluntary practice for banks to start issuing their ESG report, making sure that they tell us where their financial flows are going. And we do have a lot of transition plans in place to work with certain companies, but not at the country level. I'm not aware of one, at least. And so this answers the first part of the question. And I think there's a second part I'm seeing. Or sorry, this is a new one, actually.
Yeah, the new one. Yeah. The new one is from Akjol. So what problems do have the climate investments in general? In the scale of Kazakhstan, how do you think, do the country have the positive invest climate for investors to finance projects on climate change and renewable things? Also, how would you assess the invest climate in Kazakhstan these days for climate projects, and what advices you could give to authorities for improving invest attractiveness?
Of course, very good question, and you all are asking really good questions, so I'm happy to see that. But in terms of what problems do we have in terms of climate investments in general, one main thing that not just Kazakhstan has, but many countries have, is the low cost of energy. So that's something that makes it difficult for people to switch to climate investments and green investments when you have low cost for fossil fuel. So I would say that's the main thing. Of course, it's never popular being someone to say increase the prices, because I think we as consumers should not have the burden when it comes to changing practices. Changing practices can come from behavioral or from encouragement from the government, which you have actually in Kazakhstan. There are a lot of programs that provides subsidies to encourage green investments, whether you're an individual or an MSME or like a corporate entity. And how would I assess the investment climate in Kazakhstan in these days for climate projects? As I showed you, we have plenty of investments that are coming into the country. So, and I don't just work in Kazakhstan, so I cannot just say, I'm not only focused on Kazakhstan, I focus on other countries. But I would say investment climate kind of dropped in general, not just for, investment climate, not for climate, dropped in general. Post-COVID and post the war as well. It did not help the appetite, but now we're seeing it going up again. So that's really good. And what advice would I give the authority to improve investment attractiveness? Look, again, this is, I don't feel that I'm in a place to give advice for authorities to improve the investment attractiveness. I think continuing with projects and programs the way they are that help attract help make climate investments more attractive would definitely help. So subsidizing the cost of these investments, providing more sessions, things that such as Dana and her organization are doing are very important as well to help people understand what does it mean to have a green investment. So I think not just for Kazakhstan, but all countries around the world, they need to start integrating climate and climate discussion, even in our books, in our children's books, just to have a better understanding of what it is and what it means for us to change our behavior when it comes to consumption and our expectations as well. So that would be my response.
Thank you. And the last question from Verena is that what do you think about the recent changes to tax code in Kazakhstan on setting fixed tax amount for digital companies do you think it's better in terms of the usage of electricity? For digital companies, do you think it's better for environment or not? I would like to just know what the perspective of the person who is involved in green investments.
Excellent question. And I honestly would need, if you're a digital company, I would need to see your electricity consumption, see how much your benchmark was, and do the calculation to give you a fair answer. It's just difficult just to say it based on the numbers you have listed. But in general, like fixed tax amount, it depends really. I feel sometimes it should be prorated, or like smart meter is the one that we usually call for and encourage for, because this way you would know exactly what you're consuming and what you're doing. But again, this could be something to help digital companies, but I haven't got too involved in it. More than happy to look into it if you send me the details.
Thank you so much. So today was very interesting questions, and there is also one more question. I was just curious whether fixation or taxes would be more beneficial for corporations to budgeting their expenses, or it really improves the environment.
I would say it's mostly for budgeting. It would be easier. That would be my first response. Yeah. And again, that's not my area of expertise. I haven't worked on the fixation. We have a team that works specifically on that, but it's an excellent question. I think for the environment, I usually see the smart metering to be the best, to be honest with you. That's why it helps you understand your consumption. It helps you reduce it. But when it's fixed, you don't feel the same need to reduce the consumption. It's just completely different price range, and you feel that you know that you'd be paying this fixed amount for the consumption. So you just consume on that with that in mind. While with the smart metering, I prefer it because you have how much you're using, and then it changes also. The rates change depending on the brackets of usage, so that also makes you feel that you would reduce the consumption, which is better for the environment in my opinion. But this is just my humble opinion. Yeah, I'm not a specific expertise on this.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Anуд. Today lecture was the last one in the course, so I'm so happy that the questions that the participants are asking are so meaningful and interesting. Thank you, Anуд, for your contribution. We are always happy when such experts as you are always welcoming the requests that we are sending to you to make a pro bono contributions that is very meaningful for us. So I think that we can end our lecture. We will send all of the materials, the links to the videos and the presentation from Anуд to our Telegram channel. And I think that if the participants will have some specific questions, maybe personal questions to Anуд, you can find Anуд's LinkedIn or something like that. And you also can ask the questions personally, if you don't mind, Anуд, in terms of the theme of the lecture.
Not at all. I'd be happy to. I also come to Kazakhstan often, so it would be my pleasure to even meet some of the global shapers and some of the participants. It would be nice to actually collaborate and do something together, Dana, to make sure maybe we can have something live in Almaty or Astana. It would be a pleasure, or other cities in Kazakhstan, of course. Thank you very much for having me and for the great questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. So let's be in touch.